from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the program. First hour, our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez, if you want to join us. And, of course, we're bringing you live coverage of the RNC in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We've got plenty to discuss on that front. We've got our Westwood One correspondent on the ground in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Republican National Convention. And there's a bunch of news I want to get to, and we're going to get to it momentarily. But I do want to get to him. And I also want you to hear from Peter Navarro, because tonight they're talking about hostages in Israel and in Gaza that are being held by Hamas. They're talking about the brave soldiers that lost their lives at Abbey Gate, and there's a World War II veteran right now addressing the RNC. And we also heard from some political prisoners like Peter Navarro. Listen to this.
Yes, indeed. This morning I did walk out of a federal prison in Miami. Joe Biden and his Department of Injustice put me there. Tonight, I'm here with you in this beautiful city of Milwaukee. I've got a very simple message for you. If they can come for me, and if they can come for Donald Trump, be careful, they will come for you.
Of course, that, again, former White House trade advisor Peter Navarro, a regular on this program. And I want to go to Westwood One correspondent on the ground live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Steve Futterman. Tell us what's going on. I guess there's a lot of anticipation for the big speech from J.D. Vance, or not so much?
Oh, no, I think there is. I mean, this is going to be his introduction to a large extent to the nation. I mean, when you are delivering the acceptance speech for president or vice president, this is sort of your coming out party, if you will, for the rest of the nation. It's a very important speech. And, of course, everything you say is going to be looked at through a microscope and analyzed. If you make a mistake, it's going to be taken advantage by the other side as well and made into a commercial. It's very interesting. All the stuff we've heard tonight, and some of it's been very emotional, especially you talked about some of the families whose children died in Afghanistan during the withdrawal by President Biden, a withdrawal that's been widely criticized by both sides to a large extent as well. But these were very emotional families. And listen, they lost some of their closest, the people that love the most, and they were pointing the blame at Joe Biden. We've seen this before at other political conventions, the current party being criticized for mishandling a military event, and you have relatives blaming one side or the other. So this is not a big surprise, but still it just tugs at your heart when you see these parents who are obviously still in mourning. They will never recover from this, and that's been quite emotional tonight. But the big story is going to be, in the end, J.D. Vance, his introduction to the country, and it's been a speech which I'm sure he's been working on. It's been reviewed by the Trump people, the Trump campaign people, and we'll see how he does. He's a very good speaker. He comes across very well. Whether you agree with him or not, he comes across very well. We've seen him for years. Listen, in the early days when we first saw him in 2016, he was very critical of Donald Trump, said some pretty nasty things in a tweet or in a message to a friend one night. Apparently he called him America's Hitler. Obviously, he's come a long ways from that to where he is right now, but he's always been a very, very articulate person. So I'm looking forward to what he's going to say. It's been interesting also. He was on Fox earlier this week, and they asked him, listen, you have to confront the situation when you've said these things about Trump in the past, and he gave a very interesting answer, which I think he might use tonight. He said, yes, he felt that way, but then he saw Donald Trump as president, and that's how he changed. So I think that's going to be the pat answer when he's challenged about these comments he's made in the past for the duration of the campaign.
Steve Futterman is on the ground in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And, you know, Steve Futterman, I think you were raising a very good point. And I'm wondering, from the reporting that you're doing and what you're seeing on the ground there, the more I hear J.D. Vance give these preemptive interviews, you know, ahead of his speech and his official acceptance speech, I feel like that's the entire strategy. Trump picked the person that hated him most that is actually in his corner, and that's going to be his purpose throughout the campaign. It seems to be, I think, an effective strategy where you're going to get somebody who said, look, I didn't like this guy either, and to try to appeal to, you know, moderates and independents alike. Are you hearing any talk about that?
Well, I don't think that's the reason he picked him. I don't think he said, gee, who disliked me the most, who has pivoted the most? No, I don't think that's the reason he picked him. He picked him for a number of other reasons. I think most importantly, he is a young man, articulate, and he's in this very important area. He's from Ohio, not far from Wisconsin, not far from Pennsylvania, not far from Michigan. What do those three states have in common? Those are the three states that will most likely, and have in the past few elections, determine who's going to win the race. So I think it's the main attraction for him. He can campaign well. But having said that, yes, I think they had to have an idea, how are we going to deal with this? And that's going to be, again, I think, could be wrong, we'll know in the next 3 months. I think that's how they're going to deal with it. It's just going to be the line he gives for the duration of the campaign. And, you know, you can believe it or not, but it's a decent line. I can't think of a line that could work better than that.
It's not as if we haven't seen that before with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and other candidates in the past.
It's very normal. Listen, going way back, Lyndon Johnson and John F. Kennedy despised each other, but Kennedy wanted Texas, and he ended up needing Texas, and Johnson gave him Texas. That's the traditional reason you pick a VP candidate. There are other reasons now. Trump picked Pence because Pence was very much connected with the evangelicals. It was a very smart move by him. Pence brought the evangelicals on board, who were a bit queasy about Donald Trump, and that helped Trump win. So you bring these guys on for different reasons. I think, again, the main reason you have J.D. Vance, again, articulate, sharp, good speaker, young, and also near those three states. That's my feeling.
Outstanding reporting. Steve Futterman, our correspondent on the ground from Westwood One. I'm looking forward to getting another report from you tomorrow ahead of the big speech from El Trompito himself, Donaldus Magnus. Yeah,
I'll tell you one more thing, Rich.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you one more thing, Rich. What's very interesting is, you know, we've seen, and again, this is what happens at the convention. You go after the other side, act like they're the worst thing invented on earth. A few weeks, we're going to be in Chicago. The Democrats are going to be saying as nasty things as the Republicans are saying about Joe Biden, and the Democrats will say just as nasty things and go after Donald Trump and the Republicans. This is the way these conventions work.
Yeah, such is the nature of rhetoric in politics. Steve Futterman, Westwood One correspondent on the ground at the Republican National Convention. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Rich. Take care.
You bet. All right, folks, we're going to continue with some of the speeches, with some of the analysis, with some of our guests, and a whole lot more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
To you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Is there anything that you would look to, you personally, not anybody else, not other pundits, not even perhaps family members, that you would look to say, if I see that, I will reevaluate?
if there had some medical condition that emerged, if the doctors came to me and said, you got this problem, that problem. But I made a serious mistake in the whole debate. And look, when I originally ran, you may remember it, I said I was going to be a transitional candidate. And I thought that I'd be able to move from this, just pass it on to someone else. But I didn't anticipate things getting so divided. And quite frankly, I think the only thing age brings is a little bit of wisdom. And I think I've demonstrated that I know how to get things done for the country, in spite of the fact they're told we couldn't get it done. But there's more to do, and I'm reluctant to walk away from that.
That is President Joe, as I like to call him, El Baboso Biden, on BET News, saying that he would drop out if there was a serious medical problem, and he always intended to be a transitional candidate. So is Joe Biden going to transition? I don't know. We could speculate on that later. But you know what's funny is that's the message this week. Last week, the message was a little bit different when he addressed the media. He said, I would step aside for Kamala Harris if there was a poll that showed that she could win and that I couldn't win. And then he started doing the creepy whisper thing. And he said, but there's no such poll. And then Karine Jean-Pierre shut down the whole thing, not before a very intrepid journalist was able to ask him if, what was the story with calling Vice President Harris Vice President Trump. And he said, ask him. It was just so bizarre. So I think there's a lot of cause for concern. But a week before that, he said, they're trying to get me out of the race and I'm not going anywhere. So 3 different messages in the last 3 weeks. What will we have next week? I don't know which version of Joel Baboso Biden we get. But one thing is for sure, the media barely asks any questions. They ask, some simple questions. Hey, are you running? Are you not running? Are you sick? Are you not sick? What's going on? He gives an answer. There's barely any follow-up. They move right on to the next thing. And again, there's nothing wrong with a softball interview, but you're interviewing the sitting president of the United States. You want to make it as robust as you can, but somehow the media tends to fail on this time and time again. Now, somebody who understands the media better than most of us is the founder of the Media Research Center, Brent Bozell. He's on the ground in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, at the Republican National Convention. Brent Bozell, welcome, sir.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So tell us, I guess weave in a little bit of what the energy is like and how the media reporting is going at the RNC, and give me your reaction to this latest Biden pronouncement that he would step aside if there was a serious medical problem.
Well, look, first things first, the convention. I got to tell you this, Rich. I was in Cleveland for the 2016 campaign for the convention. I found that to be very blunt. I found that convention to be utterly distasteful. It was dark. The room was dark. The speeches were darker. People were angry. You had real division within the party. You had the Never Trumpers. You had the Cruz faction. You had the Trump faction. Nobody liked anybody else in that convention. Juxtapose that with what's going on in Milwaukee. It harkens back to Reagan in both 1980 and 1984, the energy and the unity. I'm not giving you spin, the Republican Party spin. I'm an independent. I'm not a Republican. But what I saw at that convention is astounding, how the support is 100% rock solid behind Donald Trump. And I'll tell you something else that I think really affected people there was President Trump's demeanor when he walked into the arena on Monday. The look on his face. It was serious, but it was serene. It was emotional. It was statesmanlike. It was brave. It was a man who had just quite literally dodged a bullet, and feels like he's on Jesus's time frame. There's something that I think has fundamentally changed in the whole picture. Poor Joe Biden.
Oh, listen, I agree. I think there's been a tremendous shift for Trump. All of the aforementioned being very true, divine intervention, not the least of that. And then, of course, you've got Joe Biden, who seems to just not be able to crawl out from the hole he dug for himself and continually looking weak.
Rich, I mean, I'm not a Republican. Thank God I'm not a Democrat. In my career, I don't recall a worse 3 weeks, 4 weeks for any campaign in my lifetime. Look what's happened where the wheels have come off. First, it's a disastrous performance that Biden has. Secondly, he flounders and fumbles trying to explain that disastrous performance. Then the Democrats start pulling out with Clooney, members of Congress. Everybody is stabbing everybody else in the back, but it's not enough to dislodge them. Then Donald Trump not just gets hit by an assassin's bullet, but his reaction is for the ages, iconically pumping his fist in the air and saying, fight, fight, fight. This wasn't a scripted moment, folks. This is the man showing who he is, and he has taken the American people by storm. And finally, you've got this convention where people are looking at this convention and saying the Republican Party suddenly is on fire. And meanwhile, poor Joe Biden just can't explain why he's in the race, even if he's in the race. And the Democrats can't get behind him, but they don't know what to do because they have no bench, Rich, no bench whatsoever. What you're seeing with the Republicans is a very, very rich bench of future leaders. What you're seeing with the Democrats is one big nothing burger of a bench.
You know, this is such a good point, and a lot of people, I think, lose sight of that. And I feel like I've made mention of this a few times, in so much as saying the opposite, right? Making the case that why Michelle Obama won't run, why no one else will really do this job, but because no one else is really positioned for that. And I've got to say, because of the Democrats' strategy to typically coronate their next successor, they oftentimes lack a very robust primary. And I'm thinking back to, I don't know, the early 2000s when Evan Bayh was a big deal, and there was always just 1, 2, or 3 people, and then, you know, of course, the perennial Jill Stein and whatnot. But there really isn't a very robust bench. So I think when you've got Harris and Biden, and those two are no good, everybody automatically wants to, you know, put in Michelle Obama. I just don't think that's a thing. Do you?
No, Michelle Obama is what people want her to be. And it's not she's not battle tested out there. So often you see candidates who are there by virtue of perception, not reality. Every once in a while, a candidate will live up to that billing. Barack Obama lived up to that billing with the Democrats, but more often than not, they don't. Rudy Giuliani was America's mayor from 2012. But he never caught on as a presidential candidate in 2012. Ron DeSantis was a terrific governor. The perception was that he was going to be the front runner in the Republican side. He never came even close. Perception and reality are very two different things.
Folks, we're on with Brent Bozell, the founder of the Media Research Center. Brent Bozell, stick with us. We're coming right back. Folks, your calls and more coming up in about 15 minutes. 833-4825-337. 833-4-Valdez is the phone number. Giving you live analysis from the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Brent Bozell is coming right back with us.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kai Madison Trump. I am the granddaughter of Donald Trump. I'm speaking today to share the side of my grandpa that people don't often see. To me, he's just a normal grandpa. He gives us candy and soda when our parents aren't looking. he always wants to know how we're doing in school. When I made the high honor roll, he printed it out to show his friends how proud he was of me. He calls me during the middle of the school day to ask how my golf game is going and tells me all about his. But then I have to remind him that I'm in school and I'll have to call him back later.
Sounds like the stuff I do to my daughters. Again, humanizing and normalizing Donald J. Trump. That is the daughter of Don Trump Jr., Kai Trump, speaking at the RNC. Don Jr. is speaking right now, and we'll get to that in the next segment, along with your calls, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. But right now, I want to play a clip for you and for our guest, Brent Bozell, founder of the Media Research Center, because while they're humanizing Donald Trump at the RNC, they continue to dehumanize him and downplay what he went through, whether it's saying that he fell down on stage or was escorted off the stage by the Secret Service after a loud pop, right? Remember that? They continue to say that Joe Biden getting COVID is just the same as Donald Trump surviving the assassination attempt on his life. Listen to this.
Here's the question that I have on that. These two men are both elderly. Donald Trump is an elderly man who, for whatever reason, was given 9 seconds to take a iconic photo op during an active shooter situation. Weird situation. We'll figure that out one day. But his survival of that and bouncing right back and going right to his convention is being conveyed in the media world as a sign of strength. This current president of the United States is 81 years old and has COVID. Should he be fine in a couple of days? Doesn't that convey exactly the same thing? That he's strong enough, older than Trump, to have gotten something that used to really be fatal to people his age. So if he does fine out of it and comes back and is able to do rallies, isn't that exactly the same?
It should.
I mean, it's not exactly the same. It's not the same incident, but it's an elderly man coming through out of an illness.
It should.
That's Joy Reid and Jen Circleback Psaki, silent P, of course, trying to agree. And even Jen Circleback Psaki was looking at Joy Reid like, are you out of your mind? Brent Bozell, what do you make of that?
She really is out of her mind. To suggest that, I mean, how many of us have gotten COVID? How many times have we? I've gotten COVID 3 times. I'm not sure. I don't think I've been shot yet. I don't know how many people who've gotten COVID have gotten shot. So to suggest that they are equivalent as some kind of tragedies is beyond ridiculous. And oh, by the way, do you remember when President Donald Trump got COVID and he bounced back? I don't recall Joy Reid applauding him. Also, notice how she said he had 11 seconds to plan his response. Can you believe the thinking of this woman, that he's just been tackled by Secret Service? He's got blood coming down his face. He probably didn't know if he'd been shot. Remember, Ronald Reagan didn't know he'd been shot. He probably didn't know if he'd been shot, and he's being tackled by them, and they're picking him up, and he says no. He slams his fist up into the air. Do you think when he was lying on the ground during that 11 seconds, he was thinking to himself, okay, stop, Don. What do we do? What's the Trump response here? How do I brand myself? How do I get a picture taken of this? I mean, it is beyond bizarre world what this woman is saying. How in the world she is employed by MSNBC, I will never understand.
Yeah, well, I think they tend to employ the biggest crazies out there. And Brent Bozell, I feel like this. I feel like there's a lot of backfiring going on. Like, for example, you've got the things I just mentioned, the rhetoric from Joe Biden that another term of Trump would be deadly, emphasizing deadly 2 or 3 times in one tweet. His constant references to Trump being a threat to democracy, the Hitlerian comparisons. Then you actually have the actual assassination attempt. And them saying, no, he didn't get shot in the ear. That was glass that hit him. You know, the bullet hit the teleprompter. The glass cut his ear. Then you've got the loud pop and escorted off the stage. Trump fell down. All this ridiculousness to downplay what he actually went through. Do you think, I feel like everywhere I'm turning, the media is, people are just accumulating more and more disdain for the media. Do you think, A, they recover from it, and B, this forces them to create a change?
You know, Rich, we have monitored how the networks have treated Donald Trump since May of 2015. And if you went through a month-by-month analysis, every month it barely changed. 92% negative, 91% negative, 94% negative, 97% negative coverage, which means, conversely, only 9% positive or 4% positive or 6% positive on any given month. There was almost a totality. In 1 month, there was network news coverage was 100% negative. No matter what he accomplished that month, every newscast was 100% negative. Okay, has it changed? In the past 18 months, we've just finished a study, and the media coverage has not changed one bit. It's 95% negative. And yet, since the trials began, and it's 95% negative on Trump, his favorability rating has gone up 5.3%. This was before the assassination attempt. His favorability had gone up 5.3. So all that negative coverage and watching him rotting in that courtroom is exactly what the left wanted, except it has backfired on them, because the American people are looking at this and they're understanding this is fundamentally unfair, what they try to do to him.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that that's just early. I mean, we're only a few days since then. I think that those numbers are likely going to go up. And it's my hope that the media will take a lesson from this. I think we saw, I guess, one more quick follow-up on that. On Monday, they suspended, canceled, paused the morning joke with Joe Scarborough on MSNBC. Some speculated that this was because he was making lots of crazy commentary. Others saying they wanted to provide special coverage of what had happened the day before. Do you think we'll see more of that if it is something that they're doing to chastise them, or at least just damage control, or do you think it's just happenstance?
Well, I think it's interesting. First, I can't think of anything more humiliating to happen to an Israel for them not to even know it until the last second and being told, in effect, we don't trust you and we don't trust your guest, not to say inflammatory things. And why do they not trust him? Because Joe Scarborough has been saying some of the most inflammatory, hate-filled things about Donald Trump that are imaginable, and his guests have been equally rhetorically violent against the Republican nominee. So what's happening is that the suits at MSNBC understand that the public is now thinking about the media and thinking about the rhetoric of the media, and they can't trust their own show to be on the air. I mean, if that isn't wheels coming off MSNBC, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Folks, we're coming right back with Brent Bozell. He's on the ground in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Republican National Convention. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
As governor of the largest border state, the great state of Texas, I can tell you, America needs a president who will secure our border.
All right, so that is the governor, Greg Abbott, from the great state of Texas, talking about the problem at the border, a problem that's always existed but was exacerbated and turned from a crack or even a vulnerability into a massive chasm at the border. And Brent Bozell is founder of the Media Research Center. He's on the ground at the RNC in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Brent Bozell, when you hear Governor Abbott addressing the Republican National Convention and talking about the border, tell us what's the vibe like with the people there?
I think that most Americans, not just the Republican activists at a convention, I think most Americans are appalled, not just by the fact that our borders have come down and we have no borders, but that this administration lies through its teeth on a regular basis, that Mayorkas testifies in Congress and looks at members of Congress after taking an oath and right in the eyes and says there's no problem. The borders are secure, while literally millions of illegal aliens have poured across the border. I think the public is looking with a certain degree of horror and disgust as the president names the vice president to be his point person on it. And I don't know. I don't think she's been to the border yet. They have this blatant arrogance about them. They have this cynicism about them. The hypocrisy that they show when they purport to be interested in this subject, and they know bloody well what they're doing. They are allowing anybody who wants to come in. It doesn't matter how much fentanyl they bring in. It doesn't matter that they're coming from terrorist countries. It doesn't matter. They want those gates down. They want anyone who wants to come in. Remember, he said he's a transformative, transitional president. I really do believe they want to transition America into something else.
Yeah, and you know who else made that case? Barack Obama, constantly making references to fundamental transformation of America as if it was a good thing. And I have to say, we did fundamentally change as a country, and it wasn't in a very positive way, Brent Bozell.
Yeah, people kind of overlook the fact that Barack Obama, in his inauguration speech, said, quote unquote, the transformation of America has begun. And we just didn't pay attention to what it was that they were doing. This administration is on steroids with that proposition. And look, I mean, here's a reality. Maybe some liberals who listen to your show are going to like what I'm going to say. But in a second Biden administration, all the guardrails are coming down. And the radical left is going to go for everything they can possibly go for. And what they're talking about is fundamentally changing the structure of government. America is finally waking up to the fact that when you elect John Slobodnik as your senator, John Slobodnik doesn't make the rules. It's his staff making the rules. Worse than that, it's the hundreds of thousands of people in this godforsaken city called Washington, D.C., who are running the show, who are running trillions of dollars and deciding what business succeeds, what business fails, what individual will be prosecuted, and what individual won't be prosecuted. They are playing winners and losers in Washington, D.C., and they're playing with people's careers, and they're playing with people's lives, and it's got to be downright generous. Look, Rich, once upon a time, the most respected form of government branch of government was the FBI. Today, people fear the FBI.
Yeah, that's so true. Brent Bozell, I'm going to wrap right here. We're going to hit a pause, and then we're going to come back and tap into J.D. Vance's speech, which starting just a few moments ago. Brent Bozell, let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with the wonderful work you're doing at MRC.
Well, thank you. Come to Newsbusters, newsbusters.org. All of our stuff is there. Plus, there are links that will take you to on a Magical Mystery Tour to everything else we do. But come to newsbusters.org.
Check them out at newsbusters.org. They're fantastic. Brent Bozell, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks for having me.
God bless. Folks, we're coming right back. We're tapping into the J.D. Vance speech and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
America. Welcome back. And we're going to tap into J.D. Vance accepting the nomination for Vice President of the United States at the RNC convention. Listen to this.
That's the Republican Party of the next 4 years, united in our love for this country and committed to free speech and the open exchange of ideas. And so tonight, Mr. Chairman, I stand here humbled, and I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to say I officially accept your nomination to be Vice President of the United States of America. Now, never in my wildest imagination could I have believed that I'd be standing here tonight. I grew up in Middletown, Ohio. A small town where people spoke their minds, built with their hands, and loved their God, their family, their community, and their country with their whole hearts. But it was also a place that had been cast aside and forgotten by America's ruling class in Washington. When I was in the 4th grade, a career politician by the name of Joe Biden supported NAFTA, a bad trade deal that sent countless good jobs to Mexico. When I was a sophomore in high school, that same career politician named Joe Biden gave China a sweetheart trade deal that destroyed even more good American middle-class manufacturing jobs. When I was a senior in high school, that same Joe Biden supported the disastrous invasion of Iraq, and at each step of the way, in small towns like mine in Ohio or next door in Pennsylvania or Michigan, in states all across our country, jobs were sent overseas and our children were sent to war. And I agree. And somehow, a real estate developer from New York City by the name of Donald J. Trump was right on all of these issues while Biden was wrong. President Trump knew even then that we needed leaders who would put America first. Now, thanks to these policies that Biden and other out-of-touch politicians in Washington gave us, our country was flooded with cheap Chinese goods, with cheap foreign labor, and in the decades to come, deadly Chinese fentanyl. Joe Biden screwed up, and my community paid the price. Now, I was lucky. Despite the closing factories and the growing addiction in towns like mine, in my life, I had a guardian angel by my side.
Bring it down.
She was an old woman who could barely walk, but she was tough as nails.
Folks, that's J.D. Vance, and he has accepted the Republican nomination for Vice President of the United States. We're continuing our coverage of the RNC. More to come straight ahead. Should we end the Federal Reserve? Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, Here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Our phone number, if you want to join us on our late night national conversation, it's 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And of course, we continue our coverage of the Republican National Convention live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You just heard J.D. Vance accept the nomination to be Vice President of the United States. And we'll be playing a clip of that for you in a little bit. We also heard from the families of hostages that were taken by Hamas in Gaza. We heard from the families that lost soldiers in Abbey Gate, the disastrous withdrawal of Afghanistan, where 13 U.S. service members lost their lives. We've heard from a World War II vet, and, of course, from Donald Trump Jr. Donald Trump Jr. Made some very interesting comments, but before I get to that, I want to quickly bring you a clip of J.D. Vance. Listen to this.
And so tonight, Mr. Chairman, I stand here humbled, and I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to say I officially accept your nomination to be Vice President of the United States of America.
Of course, again, that is J.D. Vance, United States Senator from Ohio, accepting the nomination for Vice President of the United States for the Republican Party. And prior to him taking the stage, his wife and Donald Trump Jr. Shared a few words. And Donald Trump Jr. had a lot to say. Listen to this.
We won't ever forget the lies from left-wing politicians, from their allies in the media. When you hear them in a row, you fully understand the extent they have gone to divide this great nation. They lied about Russia collusion. They lied about Hunter's laptop. They lied about Joe Biden's fitness for office. They lied about the border being secure. They lied about inflation being transitory. They lied about how they would safely withdraw from Afghanistan. They lied about Biden being a, quote, moderate. And they told one nonstop lie after another about my father.
And that's Donald Trump Jr. addressing the Republican National Convention. And one more thing that they lied about is inflation being transitory, right? I think they also lie about how much they understand the impact, the plight that the American family goes through when they go to the grocery store. They lie about the jobs report every single month with the CEO or former CEO of Home Depot, Bob Nardelli, saying that the jobs report is deceptively correct because every month it gets adjusted. And that's true. They go back and adjust it to make it honest every single month. That's why he calls it deceptively correct, because they lie again with that. They lie about needing a Federal Reserve, something that I've long thought we should get rid of. But it's a conversation that I'm willing to have, and it's a conversation that I want to have with Thomas DiLorenzo. He's president of the Mises Institute, and he's here with us tonight to see if we can take the shackles off of the Federal Reserve and maybe either let it do what it's got to do, or better, let it not be. Thomas DiLorenzo, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be with you tonight.
Likewise. So what are your thoughts on ending the Fed?
Well, you know, it's interesting. In our history, we had two precursors of the Fed. It was called the Bank of the United States. And after 20 years, this is back in the time of Alexander Hamilton and George Washington, Congress defunded it because it had created boom and bust cycles, price inflation, corrupted politics. And then it was resurrected to help fund the War of 1812. And it did the same thing for the next 20 years. And so President Andrew Jackson vetoed the refunding of it. So in our history, we've abolished two Feds, so to call. They weren't called the Fed. It was called Bank of the United States. But it was the same thing. It was a central bank run by politicians and put in charge of all the money. And that's a horrible idea. And, with technology being what it is, everything should be getting cheaper. We should have deflation year after year. And a lot of things have gotten cheaper. The first PC I bought was in the early 80s was $4,000, and it was a piece of junk compared to what you can get for $500 today.
Or what we have in our pockets today.
Yeah. And so the reason why prices are going up is the Fed keeps flooding the markets with so much money, and it pumps up prices. But we should be experiencing deflation. And that's what would happen if we got rid of the Fed and had real money that was backed by gold and silver like we did. And, the whole world was on the gold standard of some kind for several thousand years. And historically speaking, it wasn't really until the late 19th, early 20th century that government started taking over the money supply in country after country with central banking.
Unbelievable.
So the Mises Institute ran a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago entitled "Who Needs the Fed?" Because all it's done for 111 years now is, and the academic research shows this, is it's made the economy more unstable, not less unstable, and inflation. Pricing, what you could have bought for $100 in 1913, the year the Fed was created, would cost you about $3,000 now for the same thing, because the dollar is only worth about 5 cents compared to what it was in 1913. And so that's why we need in the Fed. The beneficiaries are real estate investors, stock market speculators, and people of that sort, and of course the Fed itself. And the biggest beneficiary is government itself, the federal government, because it's a tool that politicians love to use to hide the true cost of government. Every government program, if the government announced, for example, they want to send another $100 billion to Ukraine, but they're going to finance it with taxes, they would have to announce, for example, that, we're going to send every working family a tax bill for $10,000. You probably wouldn't have that much support for that program. And the same is true with everything else the government does. And money printing by the Fed helps them hide the cost of government and makes people think we can get something for nothing from the government.
And it seems so commonsensical is the word I'm looking for, that everybody would agree, but yet we have this central bank that is influenced and run by the politicians, and very few seem to turn a blind eye. I feel like that's problematic, and I want you to get into why we have the Fed while there's just a handful of people out there calling to end the Fed when we come back. Folks, we are on with the head of the Mises Institute. He's president there. Thomas DiLorenzo is our guest. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, America. We continue our conversation on who needs the Fed anyway. And the conversation is based on why there are so many supporters of the Federal Reserve, yet it provides such little benefit for we the people. Our guest is the president of the Mises Institute, Thomas DiLorenzo. And Thomas DiLorenzo, my question to you is, why are there so few out there in the wilderness calling out that we must end the Fed?
Well, it's the same as just about every government agency, isn't it? They all benefit a relatively small group of special interests, one way or another, and usually at the expense of all the rest of us who pay the taxes to pay for everything. So in that sense, that's not that unusual. But there's an economist at George Mason University in Virginia named Lawrence White, And he published an academic journal article once that says that about 75% of all the articles published on monetary economics, monetary affairs, Federal Reserve policy are published by people who, one way or another, are paid by the Fed. Either they're Fed employees, or they had an internship, or they have some kind of a contract to do work for the Fed. And so that's the way it is. And the late Milton Friedman, the famous Nobel Prize-winning economist, he once said that if you want an academic career as a monetary economist, it's a good idea not to criticize the major employer in your field. And the Fed is the major employer in that field. And that's one thing. When Tucker Carlson had Ron Paul on his podcast about 2 months ago, and they talked about how when Ron Paul was running for the Republican nomination, he went to the University of Michigan, and he was expecting all these left-wing students to not be very receptive. And they spontaneously began chanting, "End the Fed, end the Fed," because they had been listening to some of his speeches. And he was a great articulator of economic reasons why we should end the Fed. And he wrote a whole book by that title. And so it's a problem with education. And a lot of what we do know is this biased information that comes from the Fed itself. But that doesn't mean we can't do something about it. I look at the example of during the Carter years, the government got rid of something called the Civil Aeronautics Board. It actually was a government-run cartel for the airline industry that made it illegal to cut prices. And the airlines were prohibited from having price competition. And that was such an egregious ripoff of middle America, the average American, that even Ted Kennedy and Ralph Nader were in favor of it. And so and I think you see a lot of that with the Fed, too. These college kids that were protesting Occupy Wall Street 10 or 12 years ago, they were all the usual left-wing college protest group. But they were onto something in that particular instance. They understood how it really is a 1%. Only the Wall Street speculators and real estate developers who primarily develop in the banking industry, of course, who primarily benefit from this. And the rest of us get inflation and once or twice a decade, great recessions. And the Fed also bails out the banks. After the crash of 2008, tens of billions of dollars were handed over to Goldman Sachs and these other big banks. And that's really destructive of capitalism itself, because capitalism is not a you keep the profits and somebody else will pay you for your losses type of system. But that's how it is with banks, thanks to the Fed. And so the argument is not that complicated, but we just need to do a better job. And that's one of the things my organization, the Mises Institute, is what they're doing. We have a documentary coming out in October about the Fed that'll be available online for anybody who wants to see it.
Well, what's it called?
Playing with Fire is the main title, Playing with Fire, and then the subtitle is just Money, Banking, and the Fed, and it'll be out in October.
How do people find this if they want to, take a look at it?
Well, you can find, there's a trailer on our website, Mises.org. It's MISES.org, and you just right on the page there, you can find the trailer that we have advertising it. The documentary is not out yet, but it will be coming out. And you can get a great education. And also, we are in the middle of giving away 100,000 copies of a great book called What Has Government Done to Our Money by Murray Rothbard. So if you go to our website, scroll down to the bottom, you'll see where you can sign up, and we will send you free books if you would like. It's What Has Government Done to Our Money? And it makes the case for getting rid of the Fed and replacing it with a type of currency that's based on something. Gold and silver is what most people, throughout history have thought would be something to be a good base behind the currency that banks issue, instead of just the promises of politicians.
Now, let's talk about that a little bit before you depart, because this is, I think, an area where I think there's a lot of people, myself included, that want to see U.S. currency be somehow asset-backed, maybe attached to the gold standard like it once was. And, there's people out there like Steve Forbes and others who've been on this program saying that it wouldn't be that difficult to return to the gold standard. Others think it's impossible. It could never happen, that there's a finite amount of gold and an infinite amount of money, and just all sorts of crazy arguments I've heard. And I don't, where's your take?
Well, that's a good thing that there's not an infinite amount of gold out there. They would have inflation.
Right.
These are inflationists making these arguments. But no, Franklin Roosevelt essentially confiscated the entire private gold stock in the 1930s. He paid people an arbitrary low price for their gold, and then it was illegal to own gold as a private citizen for 40 years after that. And they claimed to have put all the gold in Fort Knox. And so if we got rid of the Fed, all that gold should be back in the banking system, and you should be able to redeem your currency in gold or silver like in the old days. And it would put a limit on lending by banks, which is why banks wouldn't like it. But the unlimited lending and the wild speculation by banks, fueled by the Fed, is what causes all these boom and bust cycles and what causes inflation. And in terms of what Donald Trump Jr. was saying in that speech you ran earlier, they're lying about inflation today. I don't believe for 1 second that it's only 3% today. I think it's more like 15% or 20%. If you can just take your own survey of things. Gas prices alone are up 48% in 3 years, for example. And so they're lying about that. And so I don't think it would be that much of a problem. And it's a good thing that there will be some kind of limit on monetary expansion. And we got along, other countries all around the world got along just fine on the gold standard for several thousand years. And there was no running out of money or anything like that. We did fine. It was much more stable, and we would have deflation rather than inflation.
I like that. Deflation sounds like it puts more money in my pocket versus inflation taking it out.
Sure.
All right. Let me give everyone the plug here. You know the name of the movie. I didn't even know about it, so I'm glad you brought it up. Tell everyone, Thomas DiLorenzo, how they can watch this upcoming documentary you have.
Okay, get on Mises.org, our website, and look for the trailer. We have it there. It's a couple minutes long. Advertising, Playing with Fire, the money, banking, and the Federal Reserve is a subtitle. And it'll be coming out in October, mid-October, and it'll be online on our website. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be free for everybody. And you can also get a free book on our website. Scroll down to the bottom. It's What Has Government Done to Our Money by Murray Rothbard. And we will send you however many books you would like.
Outstanding. Folks, make sure you check out Mises.org, MISES.org, and see exactly what Thomas DiLorenzo is talking about. Great website, great organization. Thanks for the conversation. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you for having me, and have a good night.
You bet. God bless. All right, folks, straight ahead, we're going to talk about how the Secret Service is now saying that they had known about the shooter prior to Trump getting on stage, and they still let him get on stage anyway. This is a very big deal. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about that with Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith from the National Police Association. Don't move a muscle. I'm Rich Valdez.
So glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And again, there are reports coming out from conversations with members of Congress that are asking lots of questions about the security failures that occurred at the rally where President Trump had an assassination attempt on his life. And some of the information that we're learning today is that the Secret Service had eyes on this shooter prior to them actually pulling the trigger. Then we're now finding that this amount of time went from 3 minutes to 30 minutes to now some saying up to an hour that they knew who this person was or had eyes on this person and didn't take action. And what's worse is that they allowed Trump to get on stage anyway. I don't understand how this works, so we're going to get a better understanding of this from Aisha Hasni from Fox News.
Just about a couple minutes ago, these senators came out of this briefing with the Secret Service. They've been asking for it for days now, finally got it with the director and Secret Service staff. And the top headline that has come out of it, according to Senator John Barrasso, just spoke to him as soon as he hung up on this briefing. He said that apparently the Secret Service had identified as a character of suspicion this man, this shooter, because they saw a rangefinder on him as well as a backpack. And this all happened more than an hour before the shooting actually occurred. So they saw the guy and they identified this guy as suspicious. Now, more details coming from a source familiar here who was also in the meeting tells me that about 10 minutes before former President Trump went onto the stage, they had gone from looking at this guy as suspicious to now looking at him as a threat. That is coming from this briefing that the senators were in. They were told that Secret Service had called it in to a center that this guy they now identified as a threat about 10 minutes before President Trump walked on stage, and they still allowed him to walk onto that stage. I'm told the Secret Service agent in charge there was on the phone with local and state police about the threat while the shooting was taking place. That's huge. And that is raising a lot of concerns and now major calls for the director of the Secret Service to step down immediately.
Yeah, I think I would echo those calls. This is an absolute clown show from a layman, right? I know a little bit about law enforcement. I got family in law enforcement. I volunteered. I went to an abbreviated academy for a little bit of time. But I can tell you this doesn't sound acceptable at all in any way, shape, or form. If I'm wrong, I'm hoping that I will be corrected by the spokesperson for the National Police Association. She's a retired police sergeant, Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith. Welcome back.
Rich, thanks so much for having me. This thing changes by the hour, but here is the bottom line. This appears to be an absolutely epic screw-up by the Secret Service, and Kim Cheadle, the director, has been blaming this thing on everything from local law enforcement to a sloped roof. And now we're hearing that the special agent in charge was on the phone discussing the potential threat when President Trump took the stage and got shot. I'm sorry. There's no way to put lipstick on this pig, if you'll pardon my pun. And we've got to get to the bottom of this, because here's the thing. Now, we all have hindsight bias, the benefit of hindsight bias.
Sure.
We all know the ending of the story, right? We've all seen the videos, we've all seen the photos. We've all studied this thing. We've had every, guy who was ever a Navy SEAL talk about this in the media. I have been on these types of details, and it's just unthinkable that somebody could get to where that young man got to just in general, much less with a scoped rifle, to be able to take a shot at Donald Trump. Kim Cheadle cannot stay in her job, and there needs to be, the FBI can't investigate this. There needs to be an independent investigation, and somebody has to pay for this. You can't nearly get the, potentially future and once president of the United States murdered over somebody's tactical and administrative screw-up.
Well said, well put. I've got to tell you, this is, I didn't expect this. And when I saw all of this happening, I thought, you know what, people want to kill Trump. The Iranians have a bounty on him. There's a lot of people that don't like him. But the more we learn here, the more ridiculous it really, and I have to use that word ridiculous because I really, there's a lot of things that, I do this every day and I hear all sorts of crazy stuff. And the last thing I thought is that you would have a Secret Service person. Let me tell you, it's a little quick story. So my wife, I was married once, and my wife and I attended the inauguration of George W. Bush. So it was 2005, January 20th. And I'm very aloof for certain things. I thought it was so cool looking at all this equipment. I was like, wow, look at how much security they have here. And this is, I didn't have a cell phone camera. I had a little silver digital camera. So I'm like, oh, look, I'm taking pictures of like the magnometers and all that. And they come yelling at me and they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I think this is so impressive. I want to show everybody back home how tight security is. They had like a whole city block locked down. And they were like, you can't take pictures. And they made me delete everything. And I felt like a little kid getting yelled at. And I got in trouble again after that. I made a turn. I didn't see the lights on the car. I guess they were practicing with the motorcade. And there was like 10 black cars coming through. And the guy was flipping me the bird. He's like, what's wrong with you? I was like, sorry, bro. And my point is, I mean, simple things they were very aggressive with. Now, fast forward, a bunch of years, and they're guarding the president, former president, and potential future president, and they're going to make calls. Hey, I'm the special agent in charge, Secret Service. Listen, I want to call your local PD. I want to make sure. Do you guys have any weird guys dressed in camo or really blended colors? How does this work, Sergeant Smith? It sounds so crazy to me.
Well, it is crazy when you're involved in a detail like this. And yes, local law enforcement is always involved in these situations. I've heard a lot of people say local law enforcement never should have been there. The Secret Service doesn't have that many people, that they don't use local law enforcement. Secret Service has always used local law enforcement, and who knows the area better? Local law enforcement. But the Secret Service is ultimately in charge, and you're absolutely right. There is zero tolerance for nonsense around these types of situations. But the problem one of the biggest problems that we have is this lack of communication. Kim Cheadle, she finally got nailed down a little bit by John Barrasso in this hearing. But for days now, she has gone on and on. She did an interview with ABC. She made a couple of statements, but she kind of left local law enforcement out there to hang. And that's been very frustrating for us at the National Police Association. We kept hearing this story that a local law enforcement officer confronted the shooter and then, ran away and refused to engage, when we now know the truth that a local law enforcement officer was told that there's potentially a guy with a rifle up there. A local law enforcement officer, by the way, assigned a traffic detail, not to guard the president. And there was no ladder or anything to get up on this roof. So he jumps on the shoulders of another police officer, is able to claw his way up there, look at the shooter. When the shooter turns toward him, he has to duck back down, and he falls before he can engage the shooter because he's standing on the shoulders of another cop. But they let that story hang out there like so many other stories. I don't know if they were hoping that this would go away, but it's time to grow up now. It's time to take responsibility because these conspiracy theories are flourishing in this information vacuum, and that is dangerous for the political atmosphere in this country.
Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith, really well put. I want to come back. We're going to continue to discuss this because everything you're saying is right. We've had Kim Cheadle, the director of the Secret Service, saying the buck stops with her. We've also heard, I've also heard this report from the Butler City Commissioner about the 7 police officers they had that were there. And to me, the whole thing just seems like, I thought it was, take action, like shoot first, ask questions later when it was, something like the president. Obviously, I'm grossly mistaken that the one shooting first is the sniper trying to kill Trump. Just absolute insanity. Folks, don't go anywhere. We're on with the spokesperson for the National Police Association, Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Did in fact see an individual on the roof with a weapon.
He saw the shooter.
He did.
Your officers are on patrol. They hear that there is a suspicious person on the rooftop. What did your officers do?
So our officers in the area started to converge on the building. My understanding is they did a full perimeter walk of the building. Weren't able to see up on the roof. Two of the officers went to what appeared to be the lowest point from ground to roof. One of the officers actually boosted the second officer up high enough for him to grab hold of the roof. When he was able to pull his head up over the roof, he did in fact see an individual on the roof with a weapon.
He saw the shooter.
He did.
And what did the shooter do?
Turned towards him, had the barrel of his weapon pointed at the officer.
At that point, the officer's hanging on to the side of the roof?
Yes.
Unable to pull a gun out?
Unable to
defend himself? Unable to reach his radio?
Any of that, yeah. Strictly defensive movement for him to lower his head, duck, lost his own grip, right? Fell approximately 8 feet to the ground.
That's a steep drop.
It's a good drop, yes.
Did he get hurt?
He did.
In that moment, did they realize there's a threat right now to the former president?
They did. So both the boosting officer and the officer that fell were both on the radio, indicating that there was an individual on the roof that did in fact have a weapon.
Who did they radio?
So there was a blanket tactical channel being used.
Everyone heard it.
Everyone who was on that tactical channel heard it, yes.
That is the Butler town manager. His name is Tom Knights, explaining exactly what happened with the 7 Butler town police officers that were on deck for the rally. Now, there were also Butler County police officers, Pennsylvania state troopers, and Secret Service. So lots of law enforcement agencies involved here. But as far as the one cop that did get on the roof and see this guy, who wasn't able to shoot him and wasn't able to radio at that moment, had to fall down 8 feet, then was able to call it in, and I'm glad he did. The question is, what happened at that moment, and why didn't they stop Trump from going on stage at this time? This is the part I don't know how many minutes or seconds go by from when they get that call to not. Then we hear that the Secret Service, and the first report that we heard, we played that report with Aisha Hasni, that we found out today that the Secret Service had the shooter in their purview for over an hour. Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith is the spokesperson for the National Police Association. Help us make sense of this.
You know, I'll be honest, I absolutely can't make sense of it. Everything that I know, and I was a cop for 29 years, I was on, as a local law enforcement on presidential and vice presidential and first lady protective details as one of the outside people. You know, we were there to help the Secret Service. They bring a front team many days, if not weeks before, and they are absolutely in charge of what is happening. And so as we continue to look at this, tonight, Kimberly Cheadle was confronted at the RNC by John Barrasso and Marsha Blackburn, and they're making statements. They're livid, and they're telling her, you're going to have to tell us eventually you can't run. And the American public deserves to know. And I think from a law enforcement standpoint, a couple of things. First of all, the maligning of local, state, and county law enforcement by the Secret Service is really disingenuous. It's really inappropriate. And I think that Kimberly Cheadle's lack of leadership is doing a great disservice to the brave men and women of the Secret Service. I mean, these are elite people, elite snipers, elite protective teams. And for people who are watching the RNC, the first night and every night since that President Trump has arrived and walked into the RNC, you're seeing the A-team, right? You're seeing a lot more in that first night. For everybody who hasn't watched it, go back and watch. You saw a subdued President Trump. You saw a nervous and tense group of Secret Service officers. And the Secret Service they're getting maligned, and they don't deserve that. Their leader needs to step up, tell people what happened, and then I think step down.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to live something like that down professionally. But again, look at her boss, right? Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security. This guy gets impeached, and he's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm here. I'm going to stay here. There's no crisis at the border. So, I mean, it's like they live in their own fantasy land. And again, I understand the politics of it. But when it comes to, the protection of a life that, supposed to be a VIP in your custody as a elite Secret Service person or team or leader, I think that's really, really just a big failure, not only for her, but honestly, everybody that was in charge that day. I don't think she was on site that day. So whoever the
there was
special agent in charge,
there was
a
special agent in charge. Yeah, and here's the thing: from just my personal standpoint, one of the things that has come from this, as a woman police officer who continues to train law enforcement internationally, and I also train women in special classes, this is so frustrating. I can't tell you how many of my students and my former colleagues I have talked to about this. This is not good for women in law enforcement. You're seeing all these people, women should get out of police work, they should get out of the military, this and that.
Well,
this is not
Sarge,
a good
hold
look.
that thought. I want to get, that was my next question, because there's been a lot of talk about that. So, folks, we're coming right back with Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
That building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof. And so, the decision was made to secure the building from inside.
There's a safety factor because of a sloped roof, so we're just going to let shooters be on the sloped roof, and we won't let the elite trained snipers do what they've got to do. Absolutely ridiculous thing to say. Now, Kimberly Cheadle, as our guest, Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith, just pointed out, she's at the RNC in Milwaukee right now. And a little while ago, she was confronted by Senator Marsha Blackburn, who's been on this program several times, and Senator John Barrasso. And they got in her face, and very, I'm going to go with rudely or forcefully, were in her face asking her, what is going on? Why did this happen? And she just shook her head, yes, 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 as if admitting to all of the failures. She refused to answer any questions. They followed her outside of the building, and I suspect that we're going to know more. Barrasso brought up the fact that what we heard earlier today from Fox, that they knew about this for an hour. Now, there's been an attack on women in law enforcement. 45 seconds. Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith, take it home.
Kimberly Cheadle, it was hired by an administration that loves and embraces DEI. I abhor DEI. We need to make sure we are hiring law enforcement professionals that are capable, regardless of gender, regardless of color of skin, regardless of sexual orientation. They need to be able to do their jobs.
Well put. Thank you, Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith. You are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Rich.
You bet. Godspeed. Folks, we're coming right back. Open Phone America. We're going to get your thoughts on everything we've been talking about. Plus, I got lots more audio from the Republican National Convention. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of the program. We like to call it Open Phone America. And the phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Now, we're covering the Republican National Convention. It's going on live in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to be exact. And there's a lot going down there tonight. Of course, the biggest news coming out of Milwaukee tonight is that United States Senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance, accepted President Trump's offer to be his running mate and the subsequent nomination for Vice President of the United States. Listen to this.
And so tonight, Mr. Chairman, I stand here humbled, and I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to say I officially accept your nomination to be Vice President of the United States of America.
J.D. Vance, 39 years old, beaming with pride as he makes that announcement. And, of course, lots of really good commentary and speeches coming from many people. From the Trump family, Don Jr., Don Jr.'s daughter made a cameo there to talk about her grandpa, her beloved grandpa. Really, really good stuff. And we also have a clip from J.D. Vance highlighting how important it is that Biden must go.
I grew up in Middletown, Ohio. A small town where people spoke their minds, built with their hands, and loved their God, their family, their community, and their country with their whole hearts. Amen. But it was also a place that had been cast aside and forgotten by America's ruling class in Washington. When I was in the 4th grade, a career politician by the name of Joe Biden supported NAFTA, a bad trade deal that sent countless good jobs to Mexico. When I was a sophomore in high school, that same career politician named Joe Biden gave China a sweetheart trade deal that destroyed even more good American middle-class manufacturing jobs. When I was a senior in high school, that same Joe Biden supported the disastrous invasion of Iraq, and at each step of the way, in small towns like mine in Ohio or next door in Pennsylvania or Michigan, in states all across our country, jobs were sent overseas and our children were sent to war. And
Joe must go. Joe must go. And you know who echoed those sentiments that Joe must go, and J.D. Vance there saying he agrees? Ron DeSantis, who was delivering the speech yesterday, he said, let's send Biden back to the basement. Listen to this.
My fellow Republicans, let's send Joe Biden back to his basement, and let's send Donald Trump back to the White House. Life was more affordable when Donald Trump was president. Our border was safer under the Trump administration, and our country was respected when Donald Trump was our commander-in-chief. Joe Biden has failed this nation. As a veteran, I was appalled when 13 of our service members were killed in Afghanistan due to Joe Biden's dereliction of duty. As a citizen, as a husband, and as a father, I am alarmed that the current president of the United States lacks the capability to discharge the duties of his office. Our enemies do not confine their designs to between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. We need a commander-in-chief who can lead 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. America cannot afford 4 more years of a weekend at Bernie's presidency.
Of course, that is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis delivering remarks yesterday. And earlier tonight, you've got Doug Burgum, who is the Republican governor of South Dakota. And he was speaking at the RNC convention prior to J.D. Vance and Donald Trump Jr., and he called President Biden a dictator. Listen to this.
At home, Biden is acting like a dictator. He's using mandates to shut down reliable baseload electricity. That's why your electric bills have soared upwards as our nation's electric grid reliability spirals downward. 4 more years of Joe will usher an era of Biden brownouts and blackouts. Imagine no electricity for your fridge, your lights, or air conditioning. President Trump will ensure that there is power for you, and importantly, that we have the power as the United States to beat China in the AI arms race.
That's Governor Doug Burgum. And folks, I want to get your thoughts and opinions on all of this stuff. Before we get to the break, I want to get at least one call in here. If you want to call in, now's a good time. 866-505-4626. That's the legendary Jimbo line. Always welcome to call in on that. Of course, it's the same place, same studio, same phone number, 833-482-5337-833-4-Valdez. If you want to join the conversation, let us go to Arizona, Sedona, Arizona, and check in with our buddy Pat, who's streaming on richvaldez.com. Pat, go right ahead.
Hey, good evening, Rich. I got home just in time from work, but I just wanted to talk to you about the assassination thing. I've been watching and listening and just discarding, garbage and stuff. And I agree with a lot of people I talk to, and I talk to a lot of police officers. They usually come through our grocery store where I'm a stalker, and they were telling me that the other disavow of discipline with this group of Secret Service agents. And then I find out we have a woman in charge. Now, I'm not going to get down on women. There are women who do very good jobs out there in our government and stuff. But this woman here, oh my God, first thing she said, she refuses to leave, and she should leave. And whoever was in charge of the group there in person should be let go too. And the sniper that took out the guy that saved Moore's life, he should be rehired again. That because he disavowed the orders of the gentleman who was in charge. Now, I can't verify if that's true or not.
Right, but it seems that way.
Yeah, it seems that way. And that he disemboweled it and took out the kid and cut him in half, is basically I heard. And I'll tell you, if that's true, I mean, almost seems like an inside job, but you know what I think it is? I don't think it's an inside job. I think it is just utterly people not knowing what they're doing. They're brand new at the job. You can tell the group that grabbed him, and they got on top of him, which they usually do. They cover him with their bodies. That's what Secret Service do. They take the bullet, or the assailant can't see him anymore. And I tell you, there was a guy that was in the group of the Secret Service guys. He couldn't get there in time, but he was behind the group. He ducked down below Trump. Of course, Trump.
That was the woman that everybody's criticizing.
Yeah, they criticized the poor girl that couldn't find her holster. But you know what?
That's the same one. That's the same one who ducked down that didn't make it with the group in time.
Oh, okay. That was her. Okay. But, I mean, it's, you almost could laugh about it, but it's not that way because we've lost a very good person, that fire chief. Oh, man. I mean, he dove on his daughter to save her life.
Oh, and, yeah. That's former fire chief Corey Comparator. May he rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace, the gentleman. I'll tell you something. Who was the other one that was wounded? I've not found out any information. It's like they never existed, or they didn't put their name out there in the press. Do you know
they may
anything
not
about
have, because I don't have any information on it. And I spoke with the eyewitness that actually, started applying pressure to former chief comparator, and he didn't have anything to say about that.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, it's like this person well, who knows? But
Yeah.
it just seems like
I don't know if they were shot or if they were hurt in the stampede surrounding it or what happened. And there wasn't much of a stampede, but I know in that area there were things that got, some feathers got ruffled very quickly when all that went down very quickly. Pat, I want to thank you for the call. I got to hit a break right here, but we're coming right back with the rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. And hundreds of people gathered earlier today to remember the former chief, fire chief, Corey Comparator, that was shot and killed at the rally this weekend for President Trump, where the sniper tried to kill Trump. And this is occurring in a place called Lernersville Speedway. It's outside of that area. It's in a place called Sarvar, Pennsylvania. That's where the vigil was held. And there was a sign reading, "Rest in peace, Corey. Thank you for your service," with the logo of his fire company. And there was a rural road leading to a auto racing track lined with cornfields and churches and industrial plants, and another sign outside read, "Our thoughts and prayers are with the Comparator family." So 50 years old, this guy, just a few years older than me, and a real patriot, a real hero. He'd worked as a project and tooling engineer and was an Army reservist, spent many years as a volunteer firefighter, eventually serving as chief, and then again as a volunteer after his service as chief. So Godspeed to the Comparator family, a real hero, and sad to see anybody go, especially somebody who's a real community hero like that. I want to go to Saratoga, New York, WDGJ, and check in with Jane. Jane is calling us from Paul Vandenberg country. Jane, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. Well, first of all, God bless the Comparator family.
Amen.
And this woman who was in charge, this is why I called about Biden, but the woman in charge who dropped the ball, I think it's easy. Get rid of her.
You're saying Director Kim Cheadle.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think her bosses are, it's mum's the word, right? Biden hasn't mentioned a thing about this. Mayorkas is also not alluding to anything.
Well, then it's time for us to speak up, don't you think?
Yeah, I think we need to fire all of them.
Absolutely. And as far as Biden goes, I mean, let's face it, I do not think for 1 second that dirtbag has COVID. I think he's using it as a deflection to go and hide out and using it as classic avoidance, which is what he does because he's a moron. And those are his good points. I mean, he's a pathological...
And those are his good qualities.
He is. He's
That's
a perverted, pathological, lying moron, and that's his good point. I mean, you know.
Unbelievable. Jane, thank you for the call. You know, you mentioned something about Biden and not being sick, and he's full of it, and you're probably right. I think he's strategizing, you know, can he get out of this? I don't think he can. You know, I think most political candidates are delusional, right? Everybody gets into a political race, whether they're a novice one or an experienced one. Most. So there are some that are very realistic. But most get in going, look, I don't know if I'm going to win, but shoot, I could win. Now, that'd be really nice, right? That's usually how I think they think. And I think Biden's no different. He's like, yeah, I could win. I'm literally the president. Of course I could win. I could take on Trump. I beat him once. I'll beat him again, you know? But the reality is all his friends or former friends, they're all thinking, bro, you're killing us. You can't pull it off. So earlier, I played a clip of Biden on BET News where he was saying that, short of a medical issue, he's going to be a transitional candidate, or thought he would be a transitional candidate, and then decided, to run for a second term because he didn't think anybody else could really beat Trump, and he thought Trump was so dangerous. So I want you to listen to this one again, cut number 13.
Is there anything that you would look to, you personally, not anybody else, not other pundits, not even perhaps family members, that you would look to say, if I see that, I will reevaluate?
If I had some medical condition that emerged, if the doctors came to me and said, you got this problem, that problem. But I made a serious mistake in the whole debate. And look, when I originally ran, you may remember it, I said I was going to be a transitional candidate. And I thought that I'd be able to move from this, just pass it on to someone else. But I didn't anticipate things getting so divided. And quite frankly, I think the only thing age brings a little bit of wisdom. And I think I've demonstrated that I know how to get things done for the country, in spite of the fact that we were told we couldn't get it done. But there's more to do, and I'm reluctant to walk away from that.
That's Joe El Baboso Biden, he didn't say he was transitioning, so I'm not going to go there, but he said he was going to be a transitional candidate, and he really thought that he was going to hand this over to someone else, and I still think that now he's laying down that foreshadowing to bring in Que mala eres if he doesn't, in fact, just, dig his heels in and run. At this point, either one is good. I think, honestly, Biden's probably the better of the two. Biden's super beatable right now, despite many out there saying that he can be beat. He's losing support left and right. You got Adam Schiff, of all people, Adam Schiff for brains. He says that if Biden's at the top of the ticket, the Democrats lose. We'll get into that audio a little bit further ahead. I also want to get to some audio from Kim Cheadle. She's the director of the Secret Service, saying that, of course, everything stops with her and everybody has their responsibilities, yada, 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 but ultimately just failing grossly. Plus, we played some audio earlier from Aisha Hasni from Fox News on that same front of the closed-door session today. Senator John Barrasso conducting some oversight questions from Kim Cheadle and finding out that the Secret Service knew about this sniper an hour ahead of time and still let Trump get on that stage, putting him in harm's way. Inexcusable. All right, folks, your calls and more coming right up. Don't go anywhere. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Senator, just over the weekend, California Congressman and Senate candidate Adam Schiff spoke to donors at a fundraiser about Democratic prospects. If the president is still at the top of the ticket, he essentially said, if it's President Biden, I think we lose. What would you say to those people within your own political party who say, well, this may not be the most winning ticket?
Jose, I understand the widespread concern among some of my colleagues. I know Congressman Schiff and respect him and look forward to serving with him in the Senate. But poll after poll, nationwide head-to-head polls still show this within the margin of error in a head-to-head race. And bluntly, it's July. There are months left. I don't know of any candidate for president in modern history who, because the polls are moving one way or the other by a few points, abandoned their campaign for the presidency in July. I do know that President Biden has heard from lots of folks like Congressman Schiff and many others in my party and their concerns. We have a convention coming up in a few weeks after the Republican convention this week. President Biden is doing the things that my concerned colleagues asked him to do. He's doing long TV interviews. He's doing brief small group interviews. He's campaigning hard and is leading hard.
That, again, is Senator Chris Coons on MSNBC today, providing a little damage control because Adam Schiff for Brains says that if the election were held today, Biden would lose. But you know who disagrees with him? John King from CNN News. You remember John King. He's the guy with the board. Lately, it's been Harry Enton, their data analyst, who's been out there just beating on Biden. You would think he's on the Trump payroll, this guy. But John King also now looking at the numbers. There's a rapper. You may have heard of him. His name is Jay-Z. And he's got a famous line. One of his lyrics in his songs is the following. Men and women lie, numbers don't. And I think that's the reality that John King is facing right now. Listen to him yesterday. This is a little bit longer of a clip, but I want you to get the full context of the report here. Check it out.
The latest polls show Trump is slightly ahead of Biden in all these key battleground states.
The state of the race is on night 2 of the Republican convention. Donald Trump is leading in this race. Significantly, if you look deep into the polling, he has a chance to build on it. New numbers out today. More bad news for the president. Well, let's look through it, but let's start with the then. This is back in 2020 when Joe Biden won a pretty convincing win, 306 to 232. This is the map as it fills in. Remember the then when you look at the now, because the difference is striking. This is how our CNN political unit, led by David Chalian, projects the race right now. And right now, deep red, solid Republican. Light red, lean Republican. If this map played out, the election were today and the map played out like this, even if the toss-ups went blue, Donald Trump would win the election. Donald Trump would win the election. But the map is even more favorable to Donald Trump if you look through this. New polling today, it's a small lead, but Donald Trump is leading in Pennsylvania right now. Donald Trump is leading in Wisconsin right now. Donald Trump is leading in Arizona right now. And Donald Trump, most believe, is right now has the lead in Nebraska, too. Nebraska, like Maine, rewards electoral votes by congressional district. So look at the map right now.
Look at the map right now. Donald Trump is leading in all of the battleground states. If the election were held today, Donald Trump wins big. And he's talking about more than 330 electoral votes, 330. You need 270 to win. This is, my friends, I believe what they call a landslide victory. So hat tip to PJ Media there for that clip of John King on CNN. This is a very big deal. I want to get your thoughts on this because obviously this is the talk of the town, right? Let's go to Brody, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on KDKA. Go right ahead. Brody.
Hey, I'm here, Mr. Valdez.
Great. Let's put Brody on hold and just coach him on how to do talk radio. Let's go to Eduardo, Tampa, Florida. He's streaming on richvaldez.com. Go right ahead quickly.
Yeah, Rich, I want to bring up a tycoon here, J. Michael Klein, father of 6, who committed suicide due to his struggling movie ticket business post-COVID. And even another person over there in Salt Lake City, Mormon, killed his wife. And so you see a lot of this mental health illness post-COVID, and this is such a tragedy. And now you have the president who has COVID. So this is something that we're going to need to come to face with.
Yeah, and Eduardo, just for the sake of the audience, I want to bring up that you're talking about the founder of Fandango.com, which I believe when I was a kid was 1-800-movie phone, right? That was thank you for calling movie phone. And you could, do your thing online and on the phone, and then that became Fandango, which was really cool. And now you can order your tickets and buy seats and everything right off an app from most movie theaters. It's amazing how things have changed, and I don't doubt that's part of it. But I also agree with you. I think we've seen a uptick in depression. We've seen an uptick in anxiety and things of that nature. And all of that stuff, for lack of a better word, it really sucks. And you're right. I think we owe our fellow man, our fellow patriots, our fellow, our neighbors, a little bit of a check-in every now and again to make sure that people are doing well. And we need to shed, and this is very popular in the Northeast, New York especially, this I'm going to mind my own business attitude. Sometimes it is your business to worry about your neighbor, right? This is a biblical thing and uncomfortable thing for many of us. Many of us, beyond hello and goodbye, and that's even something that for many of us, they were like, I don't even want to do it, right? I wish I could take a quick instant survey, and if you want to call in on this, feel free. But I'd love to know, when you get on an elevator, and I guess it depends on where you live, but in New York, it's almost commonplace to get on an elevator and not talk to the 15 people on this elevator that are on top of you, breathing on top of you, nearly groping you, and we pretend we don't know each other because we don't. But I'm of the world where I think if you're going to be like breathing on my shoulder, I think I should say, hey, good morning. I mean, it's kind of like, buy me dinner first, pal. But Eduardo, I totally get what you're saying. And you're right. It's a shame. It's a shame to see people going by way of depression and suicide. And it's probably a topic we should probably broach sometime soon and bring in an expert on it. Eduardo in Tampa, Florida, thank you for your call, my friend. I appreciate it. Big shout out to everybody that's listening, whether it's streaming or on your local radio station. You can always get this show, richvaldez.com, and that's Valdez with an S. All right, keep it locked right here. We're coming right back to the rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
This was not merely an attack on Israel. This was and remains an attack on Americans. Omer is one of 8 American hostages and one of 120 hostages still left in Gaza. Citizens of 24 countries and 5 different religions, still held by Hamas, denied basic human needs, their lives threatened every day. President Trump called us personally right after the attack, when Omer was taken captive. We know he stands with the American hostages. We need our beautiful son back. And we need your support. We need your support to end this crisis and bring all the hostages back home. Them home. Bring them home. Bring them home. Bring them home. Bring them home.
Bring them home. Bring them home. And you hear the chant from Ronan Nutra, the father of a Hamas hostage, Omer Nutra. And this was one of many moving speeches tonight. We heard speeches from a World War II veteran, from the family, Gold Star families who lost their children and loved ones as part of the Abbey Gate incident that claimed the lives of 13 American service members because of Joe El Baboso Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. And it really was very, very touching comments that were made tonight. in addition to J.D. Vance accepting the nomination. I want to go back to Brody, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Brody, what's on your mind?
I am really here, sir. I am really here. You're a gentleman.
Tell me what's on your mind.
And a scholar.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I want to say that, yes, I want to say that was the most emotional roller coaster I have ever been. I'm still crying. I'm so hurt at what Joe Biden did to our troops. I'm so hurtful that the world just doesn't understand. I'll tell you what, Rich, we have to all come together. But I'm telling you right now, and I hope that Mr. President Trump is listening, he's a very good man, and he's very good to the world peace. And I just want to say we must end this insanity. Okay, they have to understand that he is tough as nails, and I just don't like the fact I have this really weird feeling that somebody wanted to take him out, and I don't know who, I don't know what part of it is. But please, God, pray the country for Donald Trump and our country and you, Mr. Valdez. I hope to meet you one day. I'm just an emotional wreck today. I lost friends in Afghanistan.
Yeah. Listen, it was very moving. It really was.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, hang in there, brother. You're a good man, and thank you for that. Very, very kind words, and I think that a lot of people were moved by this, Brody. And I'd love to meet you too. Honestly, I'd love to, if they'll have me at KDKA, I'd love to set up a little meet and greet there one day or attend one of their station events. We get a lot of calls from there. It's a great big station, blowtorch station in that part of the world, and America's oldest radio station. And how can I ever give up a chance to participate with them? A good friend of mine, believe it or not, when I was on the come up, he was my PD, my program director at WABC in New York City. Guy named Dave Labrosi. He was called Luca Brazzi, and he became vice president of programming over there at KDKA and brand manager. And I know he recently retired, so big salute to Dave Labrosi. And I probably should have tried to visit while he was there. It's just Pittsburgh's literally like, I don't know, it's easier to get to Canada than to Pittsburgh. I think it's 8 or 9 hours from where I am in the New York metro area. But Brody, you are also a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thank you, and I appreciate you and your kind words, and thanks for putting up with me. I can be curt sometimes, but I do appreciate your listenership and everything you had to say tonight. Big shout-out to Brody in Pittsburgh on KDKA. Let me see. Do I have time? I do. So we continue. I want to go to Paul, Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Paul, go right ahead. Your thoughts on tonight's RNC convention.
Oh, Rich, is this, am I on Paul in Zanesville?
Yes, sir. Paul in Zanesville.
Okay.
WHIZ.
Yeah. Well, yeah, what I wanted to say, you got me so quick there that I just forgot what I wanted to say. But okay, we'll go assassination first.
Well, my question to you is what your thoughts were on tonight's RNC convention. Oh,
yeah, okay, got me back. The vice president there, the vice
J.D.
president.
Vance.
J.D. Vance. Yeah, I think he done a stellar job. I did not know a whole lot about him, even though I'm from Zanesville, Ohio. I'm from Ohio. But that was the first time I got to see him, and I agree with a lot of what he said and everything. You know, he seems like a pretty good pick. Does that surprise you? That's Donald Trump. But so I'm comfortable with him. And the other thing I wanted to say about the assassination was I thought that the Secret Service done a pretty good job down there at the stage. They was on him pretty quick. I think what was lost was the logistics, you know, on the outskirts of all that. You know, so I can't say a lot about the Secret Service. Yeah, but that's what I wanted to say. And you caught me so quick, Rich. I'm talking like I'm...
No, that's cool. You know, Paul, I'm going to say this. I find it interesting that you're from Ohio and you don't know a lot about J.D. Vance. And I think many people don't know. But I thought a lot of Ohioans knew J.D. Vance. But interesting that you mentioned that and that you're learning about him, because I think that's what this speech tonight was all about, him accepting the nomination and introducing himself to the world, really, in this debut speech as the front runner or the actual nominee for vice president is a big deal. And contrary to my colleague from Westwood One, Steve Futterman, who disagrees with me that he was picked because of logistical things. I think in conventional wisdom, that's probably makes sense. But my issue with conventional wisdom is that I don't think Trump uses conventional wisdom. I think Trump uses a different type of wisdom, street smarts, and other types of calculations that he makes. Because I think when you look at the numbers, right, this 330 electoral votes, that's not something that came about because of his selection of J.D. Vance. That's all Trump, right? Trump could pick Paul from Zanesville, Ohio to be his VP and likely lose very little votes, if any, because people are not really on board for the vice president when it comes to Trump. He's a huge brand. So I think in anybody else that were running, they would pick a vice president that really complements them in the sense that they can win certain states, they're popular in the Midwest, whatever it is, these swing states that he needs help in. And I don't discount that. But I also don't discount my theory. That is, he picked Vance because he's a very sincere apologist for becoming a Trumper. And I think as the months go by, the next few months, and there's active campaigning going on, now you've got two guys running for Trump for president, right? You got Trump running for himself and then Vance running to put Trump in the White House. As he's out there, it's going to inevitably be the question all the time. You said Trump was like Hitler. You said Trump was MAGA people were whatever. You were disparaging to Trump. Why did you change your mind? Is this political expediency? And he's going to say, no, I didn't apply for the job. Trump picked me. Why did Trump pick him? Because he genuinely converted to MAGA. He genuinely got to know Trump and really believed in the policies. He saw that they worked and realized the error of his ways. Okay, dandy. And I think that is going to be the most convincing appeal from this baby-faced U.S. senator that's 39 years old. I think he's going to have great appeal on suburban white women and everybody else that might be on the fence. And I think it was a good call from that strategic perspective. Paul in Zanesville, thank you for your call, sir. WHIZ in the building. Folks, pausing right here, coming right back to Joe in Salem, Paul in Boise, and more. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, it's the speed round. Keep your comments brief and succinct so we can get everybody in. We got calls from Pennsylvania, Idaho, Arkansas. Let's go to Joe, Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Quickly, your thoughts on the Federal Reserve.
Rich, that Federal Reserve Act was passed in 1913 to control boom and bust. And what happened a decade afterwards, a very Great Depression. And as far as inflation goes, that didn't get nice and heavy until they shot Kennedy in the head because of that. He refused to sign that 65 Coinage Act on its way.
Yeah. I'm with you. Federal Reserve needs to go. And I see that you also made a comment about the Secret Service and DEI being a disaster. 100%. I think you couldn't be more right. Joe in Salem, KSAR. Let's go to Steve, Reinholds, Pennsylvania, WEEU. Go right ahead, Steve.
Hey, thank you for taking my call, Rich. I was born and raised in the story of Queens.
Oh, get out of here. You're a New Yorker like me.
You betcha.
Very cool. Steve, we're out of time. I'm sorry that I didn't get to really chat with you. But, folks, hasta la próxima. Until the next one, God bless, good night, and take care, America. I'll do it again with you guys tomorrow. Paul in Boise, thanks for hanging in there. We'll do it again mañana.